What's good with y'all, boys? Man, welcome back to another episode of Rain Kyle Everything Sports Podcast. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're just doing the top 10 college football teams. We're getting down to the nitty gritty about halfway through the regular season. So, who do we have at number 10, right?
At number 10, I'm going to start off with a team I've been wrong about for the last 2 weeks. I'm holding them down, but I got to let them come up. They're starting to show me something. Number 10 is going to be Alabama for me. Nick Saban and Jalen Milroe are starting to figure out what works in that offense. He's not the passer that Bryce Young was, and Nick Saban's starting to adjust to that. He's getting 16 rushes a game. I mean, he's throwing the ball just as much. So when a quarterback is running and throwing the ball at the same amount of time, they're just trying to put him into the system that they have, but it's working. They blew out Mississippi State last week, 40-17. Jalen Milroe, he's holding on to the ball. He's not turning it over. He's doing what he needs to in the air, and obviously with his legs. But the main thing for me is that they're starting to figure it out, and they let their defense do the work for them. They have a good defense. They just had to figure out that offense and struggle in the beginning. I think they're starting to figure it out. This Alabama team is a team to worry about. They're starting to figure out right at the right time going in their SEC slate, and we'll see how they can continue to hold up against a good Texas A&M team this week. That Texas A&M team is not ranked, which is kind of a shame because they've only got one loss, and it was to Miami. So I think it's going to be a good test for them this week. They have the ability to lose this game. If Alabama loses this game, it's going to be troublesome for them. But I think they'll be able to. I think they're starting to figure it out, so I think they'll be able to win it.
Yeah, and like you said, I think they're really starting to, adapt to Jalen Milroe's, play style. So I think the biggest thing for them is if he can just control the ball and not turn the ball over, and then, just play the Alabama football with the running game, I think they'll be all right.
Next up at number 9, I have Notre Dame. This Notre Dame team, I like them a lot still. I dropped them down a little bit this week, not just because I think that some more teams just showed me a little bit more this week. I don't think it's really a lot to do with Notre Dame. They had that good win versus Duke with a good Duke team. Main point for me is that Notre Dame offense is they're what they need to be, but their defense holding Duke to 14 points is really good. They only held Ohio State to 17 points. That offense for Notre Dame is better than we think. The story is Sam Hartman and that good running game they have, but I think that defense is more of a story than people like to talk about. So for me, I have the Notre Dame team at 9 just because of that one loss, but I think that Notre Dame team really could jump up coming up, especially with that easy schedule down the road. They played number 25 Louisville this week. The line's a lot closer in that game than I thought it would be. It's only a couple points, but I think Notre Dame should have no problem with them.
Yeah, and I agree. This team to me still has a chance to get into the playoffs. They still got USC, which I think they will beat them. But like you said, the story is Sam Harden in that offense, but their defense is legit as well.
Number 8, I have USC dropping from 2 to 8 this week. Everybody likes their offense. I think they have one of the most high-powered, explosive offenses in college football. But they're really disappointing against Colorado. They had a really good first half lead. They looked good in the first half. They let Colorado score right before halftime, and they just carried them into the second half and almost beat them. And this is not. And after seeing that Oregon team go out and just absolutely destroy from buzzer to buzzer on that Colorado team, and then to let USC only beat them by a touchdown, it's embarrassing to let them put up 41 points. That USC defense is the worry right now. We know what their offense is. We're not worried about it. We know what Caleb Williams is. We're not worried about him. But that defense is definitely a problem going into the rest of that heavy Pac-12 schedule.
Yeah, and that's been, Lincoln Riley's kryptonite since he's been a head coach, even going back to Oklahoma. The offense has always been there, but they can't stop anything on defense. And I feel like, in that heavy Pac-12, everybody has a good quarterback and everybody has a capable offense. But if you can't stop anybody, I don't care who you have a quarterback. You can't expect the guy to go out there and score a touchdown every single time they touch the ball. And I think Saturday, with Colorado putting up 41, that's just a telltale.
For me, next up, I have number 7, Penn State. I have them one spot higher than last week, mostly because USC bumping down. For me, with this Penn State team, we know what they are on offense, putting up 41 points, but that defense is just so good. Holding Power 5 teams to under 15 points, being able to just get their quarterback and their offense a lead early from the jump, put no pressure on them, and then just be able to ride that wave the whole way. This Penn State team is good. We won't be able to see anything from them this week going into their bye week, but looking forward to them coming up in the rest of their schedule.
Yeah, but like I said, this Penn State team is legit. I'm not quite sure how good they are. Their most notable win is against Iowa, which, they have nothing in offense, but they do have a good defense. So I'm just curious to see how they match up as the season goes on against the better teams.
Next up, we got Oregon. Oregon showed us a lot against Colorado. This Bo Nix is really starting to work. Still one of the really high on the Heisman odds. We know what they are offensively. He's got a really good quarterback passer rating this year. Defensively, we just seen them in a comparison to USC this last week. Them holding Colorado to 6 points, and then USC going out and letting Colorado score 41 really shows that there's a difference in that Pac-12. And that gap between Oregon and USC is starting to sway towards Oregon's way a whole lot more than people thought. I think everybody's really high on USC over Oregon. But after seeing that, I'm not gonna jump to conclusions in 1 week. I still have them 6-8, still really close, but it's gonna be something to look at going down the stretch.
Yeah, and I think when that Colorado Oregon game was first played, I couldn't really tell, was this game more about Oregon or was it more about Colorado? But I think after this week, seeing what Colorado did to USC on the offensive ball, putting up 41 points, I think that game was definitely more about how good Oregon actually is. They put up 46 points, but they only gave up 6. So, I mean, Oregon's legit, very, very legit.
And then next up, I have Georgia at 5, dropping down one spot for me. Georgia starting slow has been a worry for me, but not only did they start slow in this game, they continued to go slow. They just barely pulled it out. I mean, it was tied at halftime. It was tied at the end of the third quarter, and they played that Auburn team that is not very good. They let an Auburn offense that has not been productive at all year score 20 points on them. They only scored 27 on that defense. Now, that Auburn defense is good, and I did expect it to be a little slower for them, but for that game to be a one-possession game was really shocking, and the score could have been flipped the other way. That Auburn team could have pulled that win out, and that Georgia team starting off slow and then continuing it, playing against good SEC opponents is starting to worry me, and they play Kentucky this week, and I don't know how well they're going to be able to match up. I mean, we saw they started off slow against South Carolina. They started off slow against UAB. They started off and finished slow against Auburn. Now, Carson Beck is starting to get his step. We know what Brock Bowers is. But it's just worrisome for me that team, I don't know that they're completely complete like they were last year, and going against good ranked SEC opponents, and then I'm sure their goal is for the playoffs, and then going up against the Pac-12, the Big Ten, all those powerful teams on the other side in the playoffs. I don't know if this Georgia team can hold up.
Yeah, this game actually built my confidence for Georgia. I think this is a huge step for Carson Beck going into a hostile environment in Auburn, a rivalry game, and making the big plays to win the game. The running attack that Auburn had disconcerned me a little bit because the scheme was there for Georgia, but their players were just not fitting right. They continue to let Thorne and Ashford get outside. I mean, the QB run really did concern me, but I feel better about Carson Beck and Georgia's offense after this game because that was my biggest worry. But I think the 14 points is good for Georgia. I think they'll kill Kentucky this week.
Oh, I don't. No way. That's one of my bets for the week. But, I mean, Carson Beck did look better with 313 passing yards, but I don't know. Just keeping the game that close with that Auburn team, who we know is not that good, it's worrisome for me, especially going up against teams like Kentucky this week. They still got to play Florida. Then they got to go in the SEC championship game and play their LSU or Alabama. Georgia has a tough road ahead of them, I think. Next up for me, I have Florida State. Coming off a bye this week, we know Florida State has had big wins in the past already. I really like Jordan Travis, even though he struggled 2 games or last game. They play Virginia Tech this week, so I'm going to see a whole lot from that Virginia Tech team. Is not super great, but that Florida State team needs to start to open the gap up some on teams. They're allowing games to be too close. They beat Boston College by 2 points and then went to overtime with Clemson. They just need to stop making the games as close as they are, because I believe a factor for me is, do good teams blow out teams they should. Florida State's winning the games. They're not blowing them out. But that Florida State team does look good. I like their offense. Their defense is solid. So I have them at 4 this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think they deserve to be in that 4 spot. But, I mean, their most notable win is against LSU. And looking back on that win, how impressive really is that? At the time, it was big, and I still do think it's a good win. But, I can't wait to see them play Duke, because I think that could be they could definitely be on upset alert against Duke.
Next up for me at 3, this was a really hard 3 and 2 for me. But number 3, I do have Texas coming off a huge statement game against a good Kansas team, 40-14. My goodness, that we know what Quinn Ewers, he's starting to be. I mean, an absolute stud at quarterback. Not saying he wasn't before, but he's really starting to build into a shell. He's starting to lead that offense. That defense holding on Kansas only 14 points, really impressive. I think that was one of their first big tests besides for Alabama. But that Alabama team wasn't what they were when they played Texas, so I don't really count that win too much. But this Kansas team was good when they played them, and they showed us something. We're going to see what they do against Oklahoma this week. I would love to see this Texas team blow out Oklahoma. And if they do, expect them to move up to my 2. This Texas team is good. This Oklahoma team is good too. And so if this Texas team can blow out this Oklahoma team like they did Kansas, everybody's going to be watching for Texas this year.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely their biggest game. The Red River rivalry game. So, it's at Texas -6 right now. But I'm really confident in Texas. I do think they'll go and beat Oklahoma soundly. I really like their weapons. Ewers, Adonai Mitchell. They've got a good run game too. They're physical and they have that unique ability to turn it off and turn it on. They played Wyoming close. I mean, it was a one-score game in the fourth quarter. And what did they do? 31-10. They go kill Baylor. They were tied 14 with Kansas, and then the final score was 40-14. So I think when they go, knowing they have to play the whole game, I think they'll do what they similarly did to Alabama. So I have Texas winning big this week, but I do like this Texas team a lot.
Next up at my 2, I have Michigan. This Michigan team is quietly one of the best teams in football. They're quietly because they haven't played anybody, but these scores are out of this world. 30-3, 35-7, 31-6, 31-7, 45-7. Are they playing the greatest competition? No, but they're playing Power 5 opponents. I mean, beating Nebraska this week 45-7. They beat Rutgers the week before 31-7. I mean, their defense is extremely solid. They allowed 3, 7, 6, 7, 7 points through the first 5 weeks. No team scored over 1 touchdown. And that offense, 30, 35, 31, 31, 45. It's tough for me to make a case for them to be in the best team in football because some of these teams already have these high-quality wins that Michigan doesn't have yet. But we'll get to see them down the stretch playing teams like Penn State and Ohio State. So we'll get the test for them later on in the year, even though they don't play those teams until the 3 weeks left in the season and then 1 week left in the season. So we'll continue to see them beat up on bad teams, and then we'll really get to see what they're at right before playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing to bad teams what great teams do to bad teams. This team's not flashy. They don't have a lot of crazy explosive plays and super awesome, the Marvin Harrisons, the Brock Bowers, but they get wins. JJ McCarthy is a solid and capable quarterback. The running back Corbin, he's legit, and he's a top 5 back in college football right now. I mean, this team is a great defense, and they're solid on offense too. They're not going to lose the game for themselves. They're going to make you beat them, and I think they deserve to be at number 2 here.
For me, my clear-cut number 1, Ohio State. This team has the highest quality win for me up to this point. Playing that Notre Dame team that is really, really good. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not 100% sure that if they played again, if they played going down the stretch and later on in the season when Notre Dame can really pull it together even more, that they would win again. So we might get to see that in the playoffs. But as of now, I mean, they beat them 17-14, last play of the game, and they're cooking on every stretch. They're holding teams to points like they should. They're putting up numbers in the 60s against teams they should. This team that coming off a bye this week and play a Maryland team who's not great, should beat up on them pretty bad. But this Ohio State team, all around, is looking like the clear-cut number 1 to me. And I'm really excited to see what they can do against like the Penn States and the Michigans going forward.
Yeah, and to me, this is sneakily a big week for them. Not necessarily a big game, but how do you handle success? They came off their best week. Their biggest win in a long time, honestly. I mean, since last year, making college football playoffs. But they're coming off a very big win. They've got a young quarterback. His first year really starting. So I think my biggest question is how do you handle success? So if they go beat up on Maryland like we think they will, I think that's a good sign for them. And the best thing is, most of our questions will be answered because they still got to play, Penn State and Michigan. So we'll see.
That's the end of my top 10, Kyle. You got any critiques that you would change? Any teams you would swap around?
I mean, I feel like you have to keep Georgia in the the college football playoffs just because it's hard to take them out. just based on what they did last year, and also, they're beating everybody they play. But I do understand how you do, have teams in front of them. But I mean, the good thing is all the questions will be answered one way or another. So we'll see.
Yeah, to me, it's just hard to put Georgia over teams like Ohio State, who's got that quality win versus Notre Dame. Put Georgia over Michigan, who's playing Power Five opponents and blowing them out like they did last week, 45-7. When Georgia's making games closer than they should be. They're not playing Power Five opponents. They're playing good SEC teams, but the games are a whole lot closer than Michigan's are. Michigan's offense looks a whole lot more powerful than Georgia's does. Michigan's defense is not letting teams score. Then you got Texas, who just came off that huge win versus Kansas, who's also beat Alabama. Like I said, it's not the Alabama team we know now, but it is an Alabama team that is, at the end of their dynasty, I believe, but still in their dynasty phase. And then you got Florida State, who's you can make a case there to put Georgia over Florida State just because Florida State's
Yeah,
come close with teams like Clemson and
yeah,
Boston College. But to me, if you look at their biggest win, who is Georgia's? Auburn now, maybe South Carolina, and then you got Florida
yeah.
State, who did beat that LSU team, who everyone was high on to begin with. So to me,
I
that
mean,
was
that's the only one I would switch was just put Georgia in instead of Florida State, just because um, that Florida State big win against LSU doesn't look as good because we now know that LSU team is really they're terrible defensively, first of all, and they're not as good as we thought they were. But other than that, I mean, I agree. Your top three, I don't care how you switch them; those should be the top three. I agree with that, and I would sneak Georgia in at four, just because that Florida State win doesn't look quite as good as we thought it was.